David Bird at dbch.co.uk here. I want to talk to you about one of my anxiety busting techniques called 7-11 breathing. Now, not that this is my technique, I didn't make it up, but it's one that I use, and it's one that I teach to my clients. Now, the thing about breathing is it's actually a bit simple, and that's why it's often overlooked. It's definitely something I overlooked when somebody taught it to me. When I first learned it, I kind of dismissed it. But there's a reason why it's such a staple in meditation and practices such as yoga, and that's because it really does work. Essentially what we're doing is we're doing a controlled breathing that goes into your diaphragm rather than the high chest breathing that we do when we're anxious. You know that you see the chest moving. Whereas when you breathe deep into your diaphragm, like what I call belly breathing, you activate this thing called the vagus nerve, and essentially that activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It calms the body down, basically. And in addition to that, we're going to do some counting, and then in counting at the same time, you're focusing your mind. So we're focusing the mind and the body in a way that will bring stress down and relaxation up, essentially. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to imagine that there's a thin metal tube running from your throat all the way down to the very pit of your stomach. And at the bottom of that metal tube, there's a balloon that expands outwards. Okay? So long, thin metal tube coming all the way down to the pit of your stomach, and then a balloon that expands outwards. Okay? So when you breathe in, imagining the air come all the way down that tube in a long straight line, long straight line, and then coming out. So like this. And you'll see the difference here. When you see me breathe in here, look at my shoulders. As opposed to a high breath in the chest. Okay? You can try that for yourself. When you imagine that breath coming all the way down and then coming out, you'll feel your diaphragm expand. You'll feel your stomach muscles come out, basically. Now, that could be uncomfortable for you if you're not used to doing that, because you'll feel your muscles move. Now, I know personally, I used to be very self-conscious, so I used to suck my stomach in a lot. So when I first learned this, I found it quite triggering in a way, because I was essentially like allowing my stomach out, so it pushed all sorts of buttons about, oh my god, am I going to look fat and stuff like that. So just be aware of that if that happens to you, and that's why this can be something to practice at home first to get used to it. So breathing in, imagining that air come all the way down and then expanding out. That's the first step. Okay, I want you to practice doing that. Just to get a feel for what that's like. The next step is to begin to count. So the reason it's called 7-11 breathing is because you count in for 7, the in-breath is 7, and the out-breath is 11. Now, honestly, the numbers don't matter. The reason why, one of the reasons to count is just to make sure that the out-breath is longer than the in-breath. That's the important thing. The out-breath needs to be longer than the in-breath. So it doesn't matter what numbers you use, as long as that's the case. The other number that we use is 3, 5. I'm going to do 3, 5 in this video because I haven't got 11 fingers, basically. The other reason to count as well is that it focuses your mind on the counting. So rather than those anxious thoughts going around, you're focusing on the counting. So, like this. Okay, simple enough, right? In for 3, out for 5, or in for 7, out for 11, or whatever number makes most sense for you. So we put all those together, imagining the breath coming down that long thin tube and out into your stomach, and then counting at the same time. In for 3, out for 5. The other thing to add to this is, I guess the third step is pursed lips. Now, what that means is, imagine that you're blowing out a birthday cake, candles on a birthday cake. You know, when you do that, it's okay. Now, there's a subtler way to do that I'll show you in a second, but when you're practicing it, you can just make a silly face. Why do we do that? We do that because when you're doing that, you can control the level of air that comes out and that goes in. See, if you're not thinking and you're anxious, you can just, there's nothing stopping that airflow if you start quickening your breath. When you do pursed lips, it controls the air. So, as you can see, there's only a certain amount of air that can come out and come in when you do that. Now, you can play around with what works for you as well, in terms of, do you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth? And that's the preferred way, is in through the nose, out through the mouth. That doesn't work so well for me. I find that my nose gets cold, especially if I do it when I'm outside. So I just breathe in through the mouth. You might just do nose only. Find out what works for you, is what I'd say. These are all just guidelines and things to help. With the pursed lips as well, something you can do when you're a bit better practiced at it is you can flatten it a bit. So you can hold a pursed lips, but it'd be more subtle rather than this. It can be more like, I kind of hold a tension as if, I don't know, what do I put? Maybe as if you're holding a cigarette or something like that. Or, I don't know, or a pen in your lips, something like that. Yeah. That kind of thing. What else did I want to say? So, to recap, step 1 is imagining that long, thin metal tube coming down from your throat all the way to the pit of your stomach, and then expanding out into a balloon. Second step, when you take the breaths, is to count in for 3, and then out for 5, or in for 7, out for 11. The important thing is the out breath is longer than the in breath. And the third thing is the pursed lips to control the breath. Okay? And the benefits of this, again, it activates the vagus nerve, that breath coming down into your diaphragm, doing what they call diaphragmatic breathing. Belly breathing activates the vagus nerve, which activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It calms you down. Stress levels come down, relaxation goes up. The counting as well puts a focus on that, so it stops you focusing on your anxious thoughts. The thing is, when you're anxious, there's a feeling of anxiety, the mind starts racing, and then we're trying to solve the problem. Well, that's what the mind is doing with the racing thoughts, but those racing thoughts just add to that stressed feeling, so the whole thing becomes a feedback loop. In doing this, it brings you back into the present moment. That's one of those things people always say, just be more present, just be more present. And it's like, how do you do that? Like, what is that about? And there are various techniques, but this is one of them. You realize you're anxious, you're stressed about things, and gets you back focusing on your body in the now, and it gives you something to do with your mind, the counting. Again, if you're thinking, this is just breathing, this isn't going to work, I absolutely get your cynicism. So I just want you to practice. Give it a go, see if it works for you. And when you're doing it, practice it for at least a couple of minutes. You only have to do it for about 60 seconds to really see a benefit. If you do it for about 10 to 20 seconds, you might not notice it. And that was my problem before. I did a couple of breaths and was like, this isn't working. Well, of course it's not, because I've not done it long enough. But if you do it for a minute or two, you'll start to begin to notice. The other thing to say is that practice this before you're anxious. It's like anything. It's, think of people who go on stage and perform something. All they do is speech. It's the first time you've rehearsed the speech is when you get on stage, when your nerves are up, your mind is going to go blank. That's why people practice. Because when we are stressed, we need to be able to, it needs to be in the muscle, as it were, muscle memory. So practice it beforehand. Practice it when you're calmer, so that you're used to it, so that you're good at it. And then when you get anxious and you remember to do it, it will calm you down. Okay? So, I hope that's been helpful. Any questions, pop them in the comments below, or feel free to go to my website, dbch.co.uk, and send me an email. Speak to you soon.